Welcome everyone. Today we have a rogue guide for Diablo 4. And this rogue guide is actually quite interesting. Now this particular build is by far the highest scaling build I can think of because of all the damage multiplication and also with melee buffs. So you can see some of my previous in-game screenshots of the codex with Flurry, and here we'll be enjoying all the bonus like the slow damage, the vulnerability damage, the close damage, and we can even do the distance bonus damage, which is actually really good for this combination to have the higher scaling of damage multipliers in this build. I'm quite excited to share a Code and also Shadow Assassin rogue with you guys, and this rogue has a lot of flexibility and also choices of going for different imbuements, and also both of them. And what we'll do is, we'll go through some of the nodes and also different combinations of the rogue build with different alternatives depending on codex. And this rogue has a lot of potential to do massive damage, because the specialty about this build is that it has so many damage increase, and it works well in parties, works well by yourself, has control, and also have more damage. So coming over to our notes, this rogue build is initially planned as a Code Assassin rogue. So this means we'll be going into a melee rogue that is going to have Code imbuement. But later on, we can also pack this into Code and also Shadow Assassin. And this means you have both imbuement and you'll enjoy so many bonuses. One of the build highlight is the multiplicit damage bonus. So there is a lot of skill passives and also skill actives in the rogue section that enjoys a lot of bonus. You can enjoy bonus on the standard ones like close range, slow enemies, control enemies, where you get bonus damage. But the special ones for this build is that you'll gain damages like those 18%, 18%, 12%, 20%, 40%, and another 20%. There's a lot of damage multipliers I'll show you guys in the build, and this looks really good. Now during the time of recording for this video, we still don't have access to the beta, but once we have the beta, I'll try to make the build and show you guys in-game play. So just bear with me, but I'll go through the skill tree with you guys and you start to see how great and also interesting this build can be. So coming over to a skill tree, you'll see that we'll be going to 1 point into Puncture and also its upgrades. Puncture is good for us because it will have a slow, and on top of that, it also provides us with vulnerability. So Puncture is definitely the skill of choice for me to go with a melee rogue. Over here, you'll see I will be going into 5 points into Flurry, and we'll also be going into the vulnerability that hits enemies. Now, one thing about Flurry is that in the first zone for the fracture peak, you can have the codex that Flurry does AoE damage and deals 8 to 16% more damage. And this is a massive highlight. So you can see in the screenshots I have over here, we have a two-handed bow that provides us with 16% bonus damage to Flurry. Now it is also possible to go with the Barrage or maybe Rapid Fire if you want to try the range build, but at the moment I do think the melee build has the greatest burst damage and also AoE damage, and also the single target damage as well. So coming over to the next section for agility, we'll be going with Shadow Step and also catch-ups for the Ice Rogue and also Ice Assassin. So there is a variation over here which I'll show you guys. If you happen to find this particular imbuement in the latest stage of the game or any stage of the game, so it is going to be this imbuement which is called the aspect of steering imbuements. This allows your ultimate, which is Ring of Arrows, to be affected by all of the imbuements, and then you can change into the second alternative of the build, which you can become both of a Code and also Shadow Assassin. And here we won't be going with Shadow Step, but we'll be going with catch-ups. So the first variation we'll go through first. This is when you don't have the codex, but if you do have this codex, you go with the second variation for more burst and also more enjoyment for multiple damage. So here we'll be going into 1 point into Shadow Step and also its passives. Now I'm going with the Shadow Step stuns enemies because we can enjoy some stunning bonuses, but if you want, you can of course go with the lower cooldown for Shadow Step. And over here we'll be going with 1 point into catch-ups and we go with upgrades. The upgrades are really good. Catch-up lasts for about 6 seconds, and each second's enemies in it take 3% more damage, so up to 18% more damage. On top of that, catch-ups will now deal cold damage and chills enemies, which is really good for controlling enemies and also provide you with a damage boost you'll see very soon. Now coming over to the center of the build, we do not have any points into Barrage, and most of our points are invested into the Code imbuement. So 5 points into Code imbuement and also its upgrades. Now the upgrades allowed Code imbuement to keep enemies vulnerable while providing us with a bonus damage to controlled enemies, 20% and also 40% if they're frozen. This also means that your damage from Code imbuement can freeze enemies whilst you chill them. And also you also have the catch-ups over here, which also chills enemies to help you freeze it. Now briefly going through over to our alternative build, which is over here with the shadowing movement. So the shadowing movement, the concept is you'll have 1 point of shadowing movement, which I'll explain the whole skill combination and also the skill method with you guys on the next part. So how shadowing movement is going to work is you provide increased critical chances and also you'll get increased damage to non-physical damage by another 12% for 8 seconds. So your shadowing movement will increase your shadow damage and also your cold damage, which can also be reflected to increase your catch-up damage, which can be really good. And finally, both of the build will be going into the ultimate for the Ring of Arrows. Now the Ring of Arrows have some really nice multipliers too, because Ring of Arrows can be imbued by your cold and also shadow imbuement, and this means you'll deal more damage elementally, and this is amplified by another 20%. On top of that, it can also knock down enemies. So if you do have a codex that provides you with increased damage for knocking down enemies, like the aspect of pummeling, you deal 40% more damage while casting ultimate, which will be the highest burst spell. So here you can see I have listed a number of things that can provide you with bonus damage in the build. We'll briefly talk about the gear stats and also the sockets, then we'll talk about the skill rotations, which I'm quite excited. So as for gear stats, you do want increased rank to skills to Flurry, and I do believe this comes on the gloves, I think. And also you want increased rank to skills on cold imbuement, and this should be coming on the helmet. As for other stats, look for bonus damage to vulnerability and also crowd control enemies, and also slowed enemies and also close enemies take additional damage. You can go with bonus damage to range, but it's not that big deal. We can also go with increased critical chance and also critical damage and also dexterity. As for the sockets, it is quite straightforward. Increase critical damage to when enemies are controlled on the weapons, maximum HP or thorn on your gears, and also maybe any of the resistance on your accessories. Now coming over to our skill rotation and also combos for the build. Because we don't have the beta available, I can't show you guys in the game, so I want to give you guys more notes on exactly what you want to do. So there's also 2 variations. If you do have the special codex I was talking about, so the second build talk about this codex, which is going to be the codex that allows you to embed in different elements to your Ring of Arrows. If you have this codex, you'll also be able to do the cold shadow assassin build. But if you don't, the cold build also works. Ideally, you want to be grouping enemies together, and you can start with catch-ups first to deal cold damage, make them slow and also chilled, and also start to apply the bonus damage, up to 18% over here. After that, because you jump back with catch-ups, you can then shadow step back into the enemy and then re-engage. This also allows you to stun enemies for bonus damage. Now during any engagement, we can flurry right away with weaker mobs to kill them in one shot. But if the enemies are stronger, we can go with cold movement and then we can go flurry for the bonus damage and also crowd control enemies and also freeze them. Now against group enemies and also bosses, you can start with cold movement, then you cast your Ring of Arrows after casting all the other spells, and this will allow you to have the highest damage potential. Because what you're gaining is, you're gaining all the multipliers we mentioned over here, and this makes this rogue especially potent and also high scaling. Now because we'll be going with the combo points for specialization for the melee rogue, what I want to focus is, you kind of want to get into a pattern of melee attacking basic attack at least once each time you cast Flurry, because this will provide you with bonus damage and also bonus attack speed buff for 3 seconds. So what you want to do is, you kind of want to normal attack with your basic attack at least once, maybe twice if you can, then Flurry. This will give you some energy and also great bonus for more attacks. Now I mentioned about the cold and also shadow assassin hybrid build earlier, so this is the second alternative I prepared for you guys. This is when you can imbue your Ring of Arrows with multiple imbuement. And notice that Ring of Arrows also have the increase of imbuement potential by 20%. So this means you can start imbue yourself with shadow and also cold imbuement to enjoy everything, the knockdown damage, the frozen damage, crowd control damage, and also the increased elemental damage with the Ring of Arrows. This makes this especially potent. And over here we have some additional notes if you happen to be able to run this build. So start with your Shadow Imbuement for amazing AoE damage, and then follow with Cold Imbuement. Now because the Shadow Imbuement will provide us with another 12% bonus damage to Cold Imbuement, you always want to cast this one before the Cold one. And do keep in mind guys, all of the other spells, if you imbue one of the elements, it doesn't stack. So what you want to do is, you want to attack with Shadow Imbuement at least twice, then go with Cold Imbuement for the additional damage. Now, because we do not have Shadow Step in the second build, because we've taken away Shadow Step to favor for the Shadow Imbuement, so you can see over here we do not have Shadow Step. The method of combination will be a little different. You can still catch ups at the start, but then you can evade back in to re-engage. and we can be rotating between shadow imbuement and also cold imbuement for the consistent bonus damage from the 12%, and also they both have low cooldown. So one of the spells is casted, they go on to cooldown, and once that goes away, you can use the other imbuement. And both of them are only on 9-second cooldown, which means you can almost always deal non-physical damage, which will always come back to the 12% bonus damage. Now finally, the best synergy for this build will come from the shadow plus cold imbuement before you cast your ring of arrows. This provides the most synergy and also combinations of elemental buffs, and this is going to be amazing, so can't wait to try this once we have beta for this build. Now before we finish the video, let's quickly have a look at the build review for this particular build. Yeah, I'm reviewing my own build. So here I do feel the advantage of this build is that it works extremely well with other classes. It can enjoy buffs from other classes of course, but it also can enjoy when it control enemies. When enemies are stunned, enemies are frozen, when enemies are slowed, you'll enjoy the bonus damage buff, because your build will include all the bonus damage buff that is available to you, and also to other classes. So when you party up, you're really good. It also has some of the best synergies for Rogue in the game, because Ring of Arrows can be imbued, and this is a really underrated aspect. So here we can even get a codex for the Shadow and also Cold Assassin, which is actually going to be amazing, right? So I really want to try the massive damage with the ultimate with all the imbuements. Now I did think about going with the poison imbuement, but it is not that idealistic because you want to focus on one element, right? So the focus will be cold imbuement, but the poison imbuement will take as active, so it's not that worth it to go with triple imbuement for the ultimate. But it could work though if you just plan for it to be the one-shot wonder, right? And of course this is a cold rogue build, which can be very good in PvP. And you can have alternatives to the build by switching up the melee skill into the range skill for PvP. This means you can, slow enemies and also freeze them from a distance. Now the disadvantage of this build is of course there's also other alternatives with the melee class and also the shadow build and also poison build. We have those previously on YouTube as well, different builds. Of course for rogue it is less defensive. You don't see me having that many defensive spells, and this can be a down factor if enemies hit too hard and if you get killed quickly, right? And finally, it is codex dependent if you want to do cold and also shadow variation. So if you want to get into the second build, you really do want this particular codex. It is not a big one, but it's not available in beta right away from codex, so you have to get lucky with the legendary to try this out. But of course guys, if you don't have the codex, I have the code built for you as well. You don't have to force on the codex, so you have alternatives over here, and make sure you check the description for all of those skill trees and also alternatives. Now if you guys do have a good build, or if you found a good build and want me to review it and share with everyone on YouTube, definitely let me know on Discord, and the best way to get to me will be messaging me directly on Discord after joining the server. Now hopefully you guys enjoy my guide for Diablo 4, and we will be having our Discord channel, and our Discord channel is ready for Diablo 4. Now before you go, and if you guys didn't know, we have a new YouTube channel. So I just started a YouTube channel with my girlfriend yesterday, and you can see this is only 12 hours old, this YouTube channel. And if you guys haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe and check out the behind the scenes and also fun clips and also more stories about us. And then you get to know me a little more personally instead of just reading the news and also the games, right? So I want to share a little bit more with you guys. So make sure you check this channel out if you're interested about Matt and also Uni. She's really funny too, and she's really shy. So I want to give her a surprise and do a shout out for the new channel to get some subscribers. Thank you guys. I'll see you guys next time.